Welcome to The Business on Radio Verulam, the voice of your local business community.
Hello and welcome to The Business, the show that's central listening for the West Herts business community. Today we're looking at locally produced food. What's the business case? Why source produce from far afield when there are great suppliers on your doorstep? That's the ethos of That Little Place restaurant in Harpenden, which strives to source as much as it can locally. The restaurant's menu shows the number of miles the produce has come, and it even has a herb garden on its roof. The menu is seasonal and the restaurant makes and serves its own beer. And we have genuine local source guests in the form of John Gunner from That Little Place in the studio tonight. We'll also be talking to Lee Twyman of a cafe and store known as Osprey about their wheat and gluten-free produce. For every business there has to be a customer, so we'll be asking, do customers like locally produced food on as a matter of principle? Would people pay extra for quality? And is there a difference between young and old, male and female, rich and poor? I'm here, as usual, with Vicky Scott and Clare McAnulty. Good evening.
Good evening.
And is there anything that's grabbed your eye in the news, Vicky?
Well, I don't think we can have a show that's about food and locally produced produce and cost and value without actually having a quick peek at the once mighty Tesco's and their potential slight fall off their perch, or at least a fall from the levels of profitability that they're used to. There have been loads and loads of pundits from all sorts of fantastically qualified consultants looking at the reasons why Tesco's are having such a difficult time. But, having looked at it all and pulled it all together, it seems that once again it's this problem that if you're neither too cheap to compete with the likes of, let's say, Lidl and Costco, or you're not offering good enough quality at the value end, you lack position. And if you lack position, the customers don't know what your offering is, and subsequently there's a decline in purchase. And we hear this again and again from the small guys that we talk to, small businesses that we talk to. So sort of it's quite shocking that it should happen to the big boys as well. And it just makes me want to get that marketing message out again, very loud and clear. You've got to be really sure of your points of differentiation. And when your competitors shift, you need to be on your toes, keep your proposition very, very clear and keep moving too. And then maybe you won't come a cropper like Tesco's has. So, that's my hot tip for the day to Tesco's. I hope they're listening. What about you, Claire? What's going on with you?
Well, we're talking about buying locally this week, and I came across this story about a local family business. Now, we've all been in one of those hardware shops, the type that sells everything. The staff are knowledgeable, the service is friendly and personal, and I just love those kind of shops. But I think I might have found the hardware shop to rival all the others. Blythe and Wrights, located in Sheringham in Norfolk, has now been running as a family business for 117 years.
Really?
The current proprietor, 84-year-old Ron Wright, first put on his shop coat at the tender age of 13. Now, 70 years on, and 18 years after he could have retired, he's still going strong. The sprawling, popular department store now employs a staff of 16 and sells everything from kitchen goods to garden furniture and fine china. But their loyal army of customers can still walk in and buy a single screw for just 5p. And what do they regard as the most important factor in success? We've heard this before, customer service. And speaking in 1975 with the launch of the shop's new front, Richard Wright, Ron's brother, said, "We pride ourselves on our service to customers. Although this is a large shop, you can be served by the proprietor. Whether you spend 5p or 50p, we like to feel you get just as good service." So a mixture of continuing to develop a bit of canny business sense and keeping the original charm has enabled the survival of this local business.
Well, my story is completely different, as you'd expect from me. So you can get your groans out of the way now. It's a World Cup story. I know. But it's very relevant to the way we live and perform in our lives. Now, imagine, both of you, that it's the World Cup final. The whistle for the end of extra time has just blown, and the penalty shootout commences, and how you would feel stepping up to take that penalty. You're the fifth and final penalty taker, the one who could win the World Cup for England, Scotland, whoever you want in your dreams. Research into all the penalties that have been taken in World Cup penalty shootouts has revealed that when you need to score the penalty that wins a World Cup penalty shootout, your success rate is 93%. But when you need to score to avoid elimination, the equivalent success rate is 44%.
Wow.
Less than half the chance. So the serious question for you, frivolity about football aside, is that why do we let fear of failure actually debilitate us to the extent that it actually damages our chances of success? I mean, if we all looked at life in that way, that actually we knew that just worrying too much about failure would actually increase the chances of failure, what would we'd probably behave sort of quite differently, and yet it still sort of overcomes us and debilitates us to a great extent. So let's discuss.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? And I think there's a whole range of new trainers that are out there that are dealing with this specific problem, this sort of moment, I think they're calling it momentalism or something, where it's about dealing with the issue of the moment. It's about recognising your skill set and executing it without thinking about the past and the future, just thinking about the now, and how in that particular type of situation, as it does if you're trying to close a deal in business, or you're on a stage presenting to your 100 or so workforce, you if you just deal with the moment, you can really, really nail it. Yeah. If you think about all your past failures, or you think about the implications of the future possibilities, then you could just be 50% worse, as you've just told us.
I think I remember it was actually a rugby match when someone had to take it was after a try, and they take is it called a drop kick? I'm not sure, where they have to go over the bars, and honestly, it is really, really frightening. Even watching it is, and it really does. When people say the whole place goes quiet, it really does.
But that's when you need Johnny Wilkinson, isn't it?
The nerve of those guys to even just to take the penalty is just it is amazing. You can really, really feel it, and then when they manage to do it, you just don't know how they manage it. So it's a kind of, it's got to do with them being able to control their emotions.
Exactly.
Really.
And in business as well, as sport, that actually having that fear, the statistics won't be exactly the same, but actually gets in the way sometimes. So.
Oh, very definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, we've got our very special guest, John Gunner of That Place, coming up right after this break.
If you want to know what's going on in St Albans and West Herts, then join Telegraph journalist Louisa Peacock as she debates the local current affairs and news of the week with live guests every Tuesday from 7 p.m. right here on 92.6 FM Radio Verulam. Tweet along with the show at RV Outspoken or at Louisa Peacock. Outspoken, Radio Verulam's local news and current affairs show with Louisa Peacock, Tuesdays 7 p.m. right here on 92.6 FM Radio Verulam.
Hi, I'm Kathy Weston.
And I'm Lydia El-Khoury.
Join us every Thursday evening on The Parent Show for expert interviews, local information about caring for children in West Herts,
and a What's On guide you just can't afford to miss. We're here every Thursday between 8 and 9 p.m. on Radio Verulam 92.6 FM.
Don't forget to tune in!
If you want to get in touch with the business on Radio Verulam, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.
So, welcome back. I'm here with John Gunner from That Little Place. I'm afraid, apologies from Trevor, who said That Place. This is That Little Place, which is actually on Station Road in Harpenden. I've walked past it many, many times. So, welcome, John. It's really, really good to have you here. So, tell us about That Little Place. What makes it different? What makes it special? We've heard some quite extraordinary things about how you go about doing your business.
Well, we try to be different. There's a lot of chains around. There's a lot of large companies around. Some of them very good, of course. And I've got some favourites, and so the rest of the people at That Little Place in Harpenden. However, we're trying to do something different. And we're trying to bring in choice and quality. Everyone probably says that, but what we mean by that is, like our name says, That Little Place. It's little dishes from little producers showcasing the best that the district and surrounding areas have to offer. So we know, and I know that you've been to the farmers market, and we've got one here in St Albans, we've got one in Harpenden, we've got one in Wheathampstead as well, and you'll know a lot of those producers, people who produce honey locally. There's some very good butchers. That we have, of course, a fantastic watermill producing stone ground flour in Redbournebury. I could go on, and that, for instance, is exactly where our bread comes from, which would get served at that little place. So we're showcasing the best that the area has to offer, and it is good quality. It's better. It's fresher, obviously, because it's just from around the corner. Often we'll pick it up by bicycle, so we don't add to the traffic. We're not one of those lorries who stops in the high street and unloads crates of stuff that goes straight in the freezer. Our stuff is fresh, and as you said, we've even got a roof garden, so if you ask me for a fresh mint tea, I will literally go out onto the roof with a pair of scissors.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. John, what made you set up this type of restaurant in the first place? Because it is quite special, it is quite different. What was the inspiration for it?
You were telling me before the programme how you enjoyed finding good places to eat, and we enjoy that as well. And we recognise that there are some fantastic producers around. Our chef is not only a good chef, but he, for instance, previously ran the microbrewery in London Road. So it didn't take us very long to think, well, hang on, rather than buying in some beer, shouldn't we be making this ourselves? And we even grow our own hops, so we don't buy that in.
You grow hops? Are they on the roof as well?
There are some on the roof, actually, yes.
Goodness me. So it was your desire to eat well, to use local produce, to really sort of reduce carbon footprint at the same time as producing quality.
Exactly.
How do the people of Harpenden feel about it? It sounds to me as though it's possibly a little bit more expensive than Pizza Hut.
Well, funnily enough, a lot of it isn't. We don't have necessarily their profit margins. We don't have... I don't want to be rude about any particular chain, but I'm sure that everyone realises how much a bit of tomato puree, some pizza and pasta costs. It's a lot less than prime award-winning local steak.
So really interesting stuff, John. Thanks for that.
Yes, and there's another cafe in store, Osprey, off Cooper's Green Lane, between St Albans and Welwyn, where the cakes, honey, drinks are all supplied locally, and I believe the flapjacks are delicious. Vicky Scott spoke to manager Lee Twyman and asked her what made Osprey's different from other cafes.
The cafe is entirely wheat and gluten-free, which is unusual in the respect that normally you would have an item that was wheat and gluten-free. But when the local business came to us with some samples of wheat and gluten-free food, we said we don't think so, because our experience of wheat and gluten-free is that it was quite dry, bland. Anyway, they persuaded us to let them bring the samples. They brought the samples, we all tried them, and we didn't actually say to anybody they were wheat and gluten-free, and they were delicious. So we just went from there.
Well, I can vouch for the cakes. Sadly, they are far too good, and it means I have to restrict my visits. You've got a beautiful environment here for the cafe as well. But, I have to say, I do come out here. I come out here with friends. I come out here for business meetings. But it's not as cheap as nipping to Starbucks and having, a flapjack and a Starbucks. Are people prepared to pay the extra?
They are, because it is unique in that it is wheat and gluten-free, so there's a lot that goes into produce wheat and gluten-free food. And the service and the ambience, I hope, reflects, the price of the coffee or the cakes. And it is about the total Osprey home experience. A beautiful courtyard, quite secluded, two beautiful stores around it, and the cafe in the middle. and people seem to enjoy that environment.
It's a real destination, isn't it?
It is.
You know, you don't come across it by accident. You have to agree with your mates to come and meet at Osprey's and then enjoy the whole experience.
And obviously the name of Osprey, the brand is known, but we rely heavily on whoever comes here invariably tells a friend brings a friend brings a friend, and that's how we've built up the reputation and the footfall that we have in the cafe at the moment.
Have you ever had people sort of say, goodness me, that's expensive for a coffee?
No, in all honesty, no. Over the years, not at all. I think it is, as I say, part of the ambience and the service that goes with the cup of coffee that is the unique part of it. So, in all honesty, no, we haven't.
Well, it's really, really good to hear. So the cakes are all supplied locally. Do you have other products that are supplied locally?
Yes, we have the honey, which is a local beekeeper who supplies the honey for the cafe. The apple juice is a fairly local supplier as well, and we offer a variety of sweet, medium and dry. Yes, so, and the flapjacks come from another very local company as well.
So as much as possible you choose local?
We would always try to support local businesses.
And how do you go about finding suppliers? You said you did quite a bit of research. Where do you research?
Well, from the cafe, I went to the local church in Welwyn, where they have a sort of drop-in cafe there, and the lady that runs that has run it most of her life, and she's a font of all knowledge. And I just went to see her and said, obviously, you know, you run a successful community cafe, and she gave me a number of recommendations, of which we just went through and sort of got everybody to come and show us what they did.
That's a really nice story, sort of from sort of church, from the almost WI type of situation into a very beautiful cafe.
Yes.
And it's been going for 3 years now. Have you got any growth plans? Have you got any? What's the next big thing that you're going to do up here?
Well, obviously we'd hoped to expand the cafe here, but having opened a London store,
the Bond Street store, well, that must have been taking up a lot of time. Regent Street.
Having opened the Regent Street store, we are replicating the cafe in its same format inside the store. So again, wheat and gluten free.
That's really interesting.
And yes, so that is the next.
So you've taken the idea that's worked in St Albans and taken it into London.
Yes, I think Graham really very much is a local businessman, has lived here most of his life, and wanted to recreate Hertfordshire in London. So the cafe is a replica of what is here.
That's really, really super. Well, thank you very, very much for your time. If people want to come along to the cafe, or they want to view it online, how do they find you?
Obviously on the website, which is www.ospreylondon.com. Osprey St Albans is the store which has both the home lifestyle store and the outlet store, and in the middle of both is the cafe.
And that's just off Woodcock Hill, off Cooper's Green Lane, at the back of Sandridge, just at the back of St Albans.
It is, yes. It's between Hatfield and St Albans. Yes.
Thank you ever so much, Lee. It's been delightful coffee, fabulous cake, and great company. Thanks for telling us your story.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So, John, it looks as though Ospreys are doing lots and lots of the same sorts of things that you're doing, albeit in a cafe environment, really, rather than a restaurant environment. How does that idea of taking what you've created locally and turning it into a more national restaurant?
I found that fascinating, and I'm so glad to hear they're doing that. Yes, reversing the trend of taking things to the capital is marvellous. I'm not sure it translates for us with our model, because we are all about local and the local networks as well. Some of the producers that we use, it's taken a year or two to actually find them, contact them, and discuss supplies and get the whole thing going. Our local beef herd, for instance, takes 18 months to actually bring onto production. So, there's a lag there. And we couldn't deliver stuff from local farms nationally, particularly not by bicycle.
No, well, you certainly couldn't. But it might be something that you could do in, Northampton or something like that, to recreate that model. John, thanks very much for that comment. But what about the suppliers? Where better to go than St Albans Farmers Market? It's held once a month, and we visited this Sunday. While Clare and I worked our way around the crowds, Roma went to find out a little bit more about the stall holders.
So I'm at St Albans Farmers Market with Gunter Weber, who is a beekeeper and is selling honey and beeswax products. What sort of customers do you tend to get?
Generally local people, no, foreigners as well, all sorts.
And why do you think they come to you?
They hope for local honey, English honey is popular and candles and so. They seem to like the products.
Why do you think local is so much more important?
A lot of people use it for medication. It's more wholesome. And
would you say that local honey is more expensive than in the shops, or the same, or is price not a problem for clients?
I think local honey is more expensive, because foreign honeys, they come in, they're not processed, but they're heated and they're mixed. And so when you go in the supermarket, you see honey jars, it says more than one country or EU and non-EU honey and so, whereas this local. I mean, a lot of people use it for hay fever and so, even though by law I'm not allowed to say that,
So it has medicinal properties as well as general enjoyment.
Honey is the most perfect food and the oldest medicine there is.
James, could you perhaps start by telling us what it is that you sell?
We're all about fresh whole cereal grains and either flaking those for porridges and mueslis, or we're fresh stone milling, which is for bread mixes, or today we've got pizza mix with us, and taking the best from the whole grain. So going back to the whole grain and knowing who grew it, where it was grown is important to us. So working with a local farmer who's based in Harpenden, Howard Roberts, and we use his spelt and his rye and his wheat for little recipes that we've got here. But also it's about taste. It's about flavour that people pick up from what we're doing, which is subtle. We're about handmade foods. We're about micro-milling, and we're about taking much more in terms of behind that flavour. Some people might say a little bit nutritionally, it's slightly different. And because we're micro-milling and we're small, yes, I know it's perceived as expensive, but I think you get the value of what's there and going back to fresh. So not heat treating things, not drying them, and very, very different to a commercial product. But for most people, it's about flavour.
And so if I wanted to buy your product, other than coming here to the farmers market, how else do you go about retailing your product?
Well, we've travelled today from Hazelmere, West Surrey, Sussex border, and we sell through other farmers markets local to us. And we have a website as well, which is grainstomil.co.uk.
I'm with Vicky from Humber's Homemade Preserves. Vicky, perhaps you can tell us what sort of preserves and jams you sell.
We sell anything. The ordinaries are strawberry, raspberry, right through to banana, blueberry, all sorts of jams. We do lots of different chutneys as well, and marmalades. We do quite a range. And we've got a new vinegar out today, one of our fruit vinegars. So yeah, we do a bit of everything.
And how do you go about producing them?
I've got a small unit in Millbrook, Bedfordshire, and we live in Flitwick. I started out making at home, and then last July, using some crowdfunding, I was able to go into the little unit, and it's absolute heaven. With 4 kids at home, it's so much nice to go to work.
So tell me, a typical customer for you, who are they?
It varies. It can be literally anybody. But it's a lot of people who kind of, things like one of our Loganberry jam, somebody will say, oh, my gran used to make Loganberry jam, and it just kind of brings back memories. But because ours are still made, even though we're in a unit, they're still made in 8-litre preserving pans. So it's all done how your grandma would have done it, and how mine did. So, but yeah, our customers, but then I've had youngsters who've worked in Costa who've come and got jam because they like it, and they're prepared to spend that bit extra on something that is decent, because the fruit volume within our jams is 50% fruit, 50% sugar, whereas a lot of the manufactured stuff, even the better ranges within shops, tends to be quite high in sugar and low on the fruit content.
Presumably, other than selling from the stalls, are there other ways in which customers can buy from you?
Yeah, we also supply delis, farm shops, that sort of thing as well, so get people pick up from there. And they can always order for a market. I've got one man who I call my banana jam man who comes here, a gentleman called Nick, and he emails me and goes, "Can I have some banana jam next month, please?" So, because we make everything, but it enables me to work around the children, to work around me, and I still have the adventure to play because there's so much. Preserves is such a wide band that you can do whatever or anything, however you fancy, really.
Fantastic. So you're a genuine mumpreneur.
Well, I try my hardest.
Foxhalls is a family-run business. It involves my mum, granddad and the rest of my family. There's a farm shop and tea shop now open in Hertford. We produce all the pork and beef sold in the shop, and we source our chickens and lambs, and veal comes from the neighbouring farm. It's all locally produced around and can track wherever it comes from.
And how do you, it sounds like a crazy question, but how do you go about selling your meat? Is it mainly through the farmers market?
No, it's mostly through the farm shop now, and we go online, we have a website, you can order and we can deliver it or you can collect. And we go to farmers markets to put the word out, say who we are, what we do and where we come from.
And why do you think people buy from Foxhalls?
You know where the meat's come from, you can see the animals, go back, find what animal it was and trace your meat, and you know that they've had a good life and everything.
Would you say that the locally sourced meats are more expensive, less expensive, or is price not the issue?
They're exactly the same price. You can go to Tesco's and we're the same price as Tesco's. We just produce our meat, same price, nothing's different, just better quality meat, and you know what you're getting.
Neil, perhaps you could tell us a bit about your business.
I build and design vegetable plots and chicken houses for people in their own gardens and for schools and local communities too.
And how did that come about originally?
My family have always been great gardeners and just saw the opportunity that some people don't have the time or the knowledge, so that's where we fill the gap.
And why do you think it's so important that people are focusing more on their own plot?
I just think it's for the freshness and for the taste and for the satisfaction, and I think it's just gone in a full circle of years ago everybody used to produce everything at home, and now people, we went through a disposable period and now we're back to producing something, and I think there's a generation sort of been skipped, whereas the children are now being pushed at schools for that.
And when your clients come to you, do you set them up and get them started and then leave them to it, or how does it work?
I encourage people how to do it and do a low maintenance, so we put weed fabric down so you don't have to do weeding, irrigation systems in so you don't have to do the watering, and just make it an easier way of gardening.
And if I wanted to get hold of you, how would I do that?
Any of the farmers markets or at www.plot2pot.
I'm with Debbie Grant of Debbie's Home Cooked Food and Catering Services. So Debbie, tell us a bit about what it is that you cook and cater.
I make all sorts of different things, ranging from ready-made meals through to ready-to-eat products like Scotch eggs, sausage rolls, mini quiches. I specialise in gluten-free and dairy-free products for people. I cook a lot of meals to order, and I cook a lot of meals for elderly people who have carers coming in. So I do a wide range of things.
And why would you say your customers come to you predominantly?
Because it's all homemade, using local ingredients and fresh ingredients from the farmers' markets, and because I can be flexible and I can help them fit in with their diets and their needs.
Would you say it's more expensive to buy organic and local, or is price not an issue?
I don't think price is an issue. I personally don't do organic, I just do local. But the meat I get and the vegetables I get is very good quality, and that's what matters more than the price.
So, some very interesting suppliers there, some of whom you seem to know. You were sort of nodding your head and smiling sagely.
Yes, some of them have actually been into our restaurants as well. and I know that the mill in Sussex there gets their grain, their spelt, from the same farm in Harpenden. We get our flour, which is then turned into our bread at the watermill next door.
And it is interesting, isn't it, that more people are making their own, growing their own, making their own. And do you think that affects the restaurant business?
Yes, it definitely does. And I think what that contributor was explaining about a return to people knowing about gardens and things is absolutely right. I remember picking fruit from my grandparents' trees and berries and things like that, and the power of that, and the power of taking a lemon off your own tree for your gin and tonic.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it cannot be replicated by something that is cling filmed and probably been there for weeks.
No, I completely agree with that. I do like the idea of picking my own lemon for a gin and tonic. John, there were also some sort of comments about how people are really prepared to pay for a little more if they know where something's come from. But there was also that cost is the same as Tesco's. It seems a little hard to believe.
Some of it can be. Some of it's not very different. It's surprising how little difference there is. At the same time, if you go to, say, Tesco's, you'll find that some of the cheap stuff shelves are bare, and yet some of the organic stuff might still be there or fully stocked. Well, things are price sensitive. We don't all want all the good stuff all the time. We've all got budgets as well. But, you're not going to thank somebody if it's your wedding anniversary and you've taken them to some cheap place.
There's not going to be another wedding anniversary after that.
Exactly.
No,
Valentine's night's not going to go so well.
We've now got another break, and then we're going to come back and hear a little bit more about the customers.
The Solid Gold Music Show on Radio Verulam is with you on Saturday mornings between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. Join Derek Staines and Stephen Hall as they flash you back, value discs, have a brief biog, and interview the stars. We also allow SJH to ramble down nostalgia lane. It's all on the Premier Oldies show here on 92.6 FM. The Solid Gold Music Show, sponsored by Dock Guard of Luton.
Join Simon Carver on Fridays from 6:30pm for The Film Guide. We look at the UK cinema box office top 10, a selection of the new cinema releases and the best of the week's films on free-to-air TV. That's Fridays from 6:30pm on West Hart's Drive Time with Danny Smith, exclusively on Radio Verulam 92.6 FM.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
Welcome back to The Business. Thank you. Order in the house, please.
We were just chatting away merrily there.
I know, it's just such an interesting subject, so I don't blame you. And now, for every business, there has to be a customer. And in this section, we'll be asking, do customers like locally produced food as a matter of principle? Do people pay extra for quality? And is there a difference between young and old, male and female, rich and poor? Vicky and Clare spoke to a variety of people and asked them why they came to the market and what sort of produce they purchased. What do the punters get out of coming there?
It's an enjoyable way of shopping. Just I like to see the produce. I like to support more sort of local individual people than maybe main chain supermarkets.
I love the food here. Finding something unusual. Bought some really nice beef burgers for a barbecue later today.
Well, it's a nice day and I just wanted to walk up and I thought I'll see what they have got for me today.
And what sort of things have you been looking at?
The cheeses and the meat, ostrich. I think I've got kangaroo steak, fillet steak today.
Because I'm carrying the shopping for my wife. I'd wander around, she does most of the stuff, but I buy bits and pieces.
And what sort of bits and pieces would you buy?
Pork pie for my lunch, pork scratchings to nibble in the week. We get vegetables, just the fresh stuff that's nice.
We particularly like the Indian sauces, but some of the cheeses and things as well. We just like the fact that they're different things to those that you can normally buy.
I'm actually killing time at the moment because my girlfriend's having a massage in Chamonix, so
So you're here under false pretences?
Well, yeah, but I do enjoy coming here. I didn't realise it was market day today, but I do enjoy it. I've already bought a couple of things.
What have you bought today? So far?
Some apple juice and some kind of sausage rolls and stuff like that. So
do you think you'd come again?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love coming to the market
because we live locally and we just like to support the farmers market.
It's nice to come out, especially on a day like this. Hello. Sunny, friendly people. The staff, obviously, the customer service is not that it's bad in the local shops either, but and you get just something different, isn't it? Once a month, you've got a whole load of range of choice that you can look at.
To take a little boy out to see something fun. Take my dog out for a bacon roll.
Is the dog having the bacon roll or you're having the bacon
There's
roll?
something in it for him. He dragged me over to the stall actually, so he's got a much keener nose than me. So yeah.
So do you find yourself buying stuff beyond nibbling?
Yeah. We buy it is mostly nibbles to be honest, and also we buy flowers as well. Oh, here's my little son coming along now. So just like plants and stuff like that, and go for a coffee. Because we only live in the centre of town anyway. So
it's a sort of destination. It's almost an event for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of our sort of weekend routine, really.
Because the fruit's fresh and it's most of the stuff's been prepared. Vegetables have been prepared today, and it's just nice to shop here rather than in a confined supermarket.
Well, we actually come all the way from Milton Keynes.
Wow.
But it's one of the biggest farmers markets in the area. And also there are a couple of stores that we like to buy from regularly. So we go round to the various farmers markets to buy from them.
So you actually go to a market specifically to buy from a particular supplier?
Yeah, from two particular suppliers. One of them a fishmonger and the other one that does all the Moroccan and Mediterranean specialities.
Oh, fantastic.
I do come for a specific purpose, and that is because I'm diabetic and there's a stall here that makes sugar-free cakes. So that's my main purpose for coming up here, really. And to look around and see if there's anything else that's suitable for me to eat.
Well, I'm just very interested in seeing what they do, and I like the various breads and the meats, or whatever they do there. Just interested in markets. I quite like markets, and so we just come along, browse around, and we always end up buying something along the line that goes in the bag.
There's such a lot of lovely people, all really, really foodie, all really enjoying the atmosphere, and I must say it was a beautiful day too, which does help. But it was
and wasn't it interesting that there was 101 reasons why people were there? One man was there because his girlfriend was getting a massage. Other people were there with very specific. They wanted to go to a specific stall. It was really interesting, all the different reasons. Some people just enjoy going to markets.
And now I'm feeling peckish.
Yeah. Well, the end of the show will be there before you know. But I wasn't there at the market, so I mean, we hear what they say. But in terms of how they were sort of coming across, how they feel, they just seemed like a very upbeat. They knew why they were there. There was a sort of purpose to it, and I really was struck by the sort of keenness to actually support their local produce, which is something. I mean, it wasn't just I had nothing better to do, I'm just wandering around. It was actually they seemed to know. They seemed to. I think there was a purpose.
As Claire said, there was a combination there, but it was very definitely a destination. It wasn't by accident most of the time. People had chosen to go there. They were making a morning of it. Some of them knew exactly what they were going to buy. Others were browsing. Everybody had got bags, some packed, some not quite so packed. But everybody was really up for it, weren't they?
Well, it's an adventure, isn't it? There are things there that you wouldn't be able to find having done your weekly shop at Mega Market or whatever it is you go to. But there are real surprises out there, and there are real surprise people as well, as we've heard.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some gorgeous produce, and but actually, I did. As John and I were talking when we shouldn't have been. I bought some stuff. Some of it was fabulous.
Yeah.
Some of it wasn't quite so good, and that was a bit disappointing. And I think that we do have to bear in mind that not all of the stallholders are all producing fantastic produce.
We're getting a very strong kind of quality line, aren't
Yeah.
we? That people will pay more, if if it's good quality, if it's local and so on. But they're not mugs. They won't just take anything. So it's very important that the standard is up there.
Well, one would hope that some of these suppliers that weren't producing such great stuff won't survive, because most of the people that we were speaking to, it might have been their first trip. If it was, they were coming back. Most of them knew it already, made it a date in their calendar once a month. Do you find in your restaurant, John, that people sort of almost make a date to come back once a month?
Well, we have some weekly people and some monthly people, and we have people that we see on special occasions or family gatherings or that sort of thing, or are increasingly local and developing Sunday roasts, which again is local stuff. But yeah, people do make a beeline for it, and often they're amazed at what they can find, and they say, well, where did you get that local cider or local flour or local steak or whatever it is, or where did you get that pie? Now, just a plug for my chef Alec, who's just won gold and 2 bronzes at the Melton Mowbray British Pie Awards. So, the answer to where did you get that pie is we make it. And it's our own beer, Steak and Ale. It's our own beer, and it's local Harpenden or St Albans beef. There we are.
One thing you might be interested in, John, I know that on your menu you quite often have mileage, don't
That's
you?
right.
So how far the food has to travel, and I know when you use your garden upstairs it's got 0 miles on the food. Well, you might be quite interested in this next clip. So Vicky and I then asked the various people that we met about if it was important to them to find out the origin of the foods.
Yes, definitely, particularly with meats and that sort of thing. I like to see, that's why I particularly like Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's, because they always list the farmer and its region and everything, so I know exactly where the produce come from.
And obviously you've got a couple of young children here. Is that a consideration as well then? You want to make sure you buy the best food for them?
Yes, absolutely, that they're eating the best possible food that they can within the budget.
Won't go down the battery chicken route for eggs, for chicken, for anything really. It has to be naturally reared, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I really said, but I'm prepared to pay for that because I believe that's the right way to go.
I really don't like the idea of buying food that's travelled from a long way, so I do really try and buy things off the market and look at where it's come from. So it's really important to me, and especially with things like meat and having fresh veg and things like that.
Very. Yes.
Yes, we'd rather buy English produce than continental, and a lot of the veg and fruit we buy from the supermarkets is often very hard and not ripe, so we prefer to buy it as we see it.
Yes, it is, definitely. So that's another reason we come here. So for instance, this stall here, it's like locally sourced. I'd rather buy that from supermarket food, for instance. I'd rather support small businesses.
Do you think that the supermarkets are sort of missing a trick by not using local suppliers?
Yeah, massively. I think that so supermarkets cost is everything, and I don't think that attracts. There is a market for that, but it's not for everybody. I think people also want to buy quality and sort of put back into the local community as well, rather than not having an interest of where their food's being sourced from.
Yeah. So as you can tell, John, everyone that we spoke to was really interested in where the food was sourced, which actually surprised me quite a lot.
It's fantastic to hear, it really is. And it just goes to show, doesn't it, that what we suspected, that people... I mean, it's all right to fill a shelf or fill a hole or have a snack or something like that, but if you want to experience something really delicious, you've got to go for something fresh, something good quality, and people love it.
And it was interesting because we spoke to a wide range of people. We spoke to young couples, mums with their children, older people. I mean, everyone, but they were all interested in where the food was sourced.
Without a doubt, and people were quite passionate about it. It wasn't sort of casual. It wasn't trying to put words in their mouths. It was really, really key and very, very important. And I don't think that if we'd have asked them, even maybe 2 years ago, that they would have felt so strongly. Do you feel that it's a trend that's really on the increase?
No, that's interesting. But yes, I do think that people are getting much more discerning. And people are getting more knowledgeable as well. I mean, as a country, of course, over the past years, we've seen wall-to-wall cookery programmes on TV. It's amazing. We talk now more about cookery than we do the weather, I swear it. You know? But we're getting much more, dare I say, European in that sense, and much more discerning, but we've also got much better knowledge.
And that's really, really important, isn't it? I think as people, even if they're not doing all the cooking themselves, if they're watching the programmes and they're getting a bit of inspiration and they're using a few more local produce, they're growing a few more herbs in the garden, it's got to be better for their health too, hasn't it?
Oh, of course it has. And we heard the thing about budget constraints and people finding it tough. Well, I can tell you that there's a waiting list for the allotments in most areas in St Albans and Harbin, and now and we have one as well as our domestic food, if you like. And it's amazing how much produce you can produce and then find you have loads and loads of stuff that you swap with your neighbours and stuff, and there's a whole microeconomy about that. Almost.
I had an allotment for a while, and I must admit the thing that I found most difficult was that I seemed to have too much of individual things at sort of like at any one time. So you'd have lovely asparagus, but well, actually, there's never too much asparagus. That's the wrong thing to say. Too many carrots or too much sort of broccoli.
Well, do you know, I heard only in the last couple of weeks of a place. It wasn't in this country, but where the neighbours get together and they have large green spaces, and they actually decide who wants to grow what. So they've got
a great
like
idea.
A food box scheme almost in their street. It's amazing.
Absolutely great idea. I think the other thing that I've heard that in Wheathampstead, if I'd have only known at the time, actually what they do is you can take your excess vegetables to one of the churches and then they distribute them through to some of the people in the village who can't afford to have such good produce.
Absolutely. And what better now to go the break with an ad for our very special Environment Matters show in that regard.
Where on radio can you hear a mature and adult debate about the birds and the bees? Why not try Environment Matters on Radio Verulam? It's about everything really. Renewable energy, green business, the GM debate, rivers and drains, food and farming, climate change and saving the panda. If it's sustainable, we'll talk about it. And if it's not, we talk about why it should be.
Environment Matters. It's about much more than the birds and the bees. Every first and second Thursday of the month at 9 on 92.6 FM, Radio Verulam.
Radio Verulam Community Partners.
Whether you need cat advice, want to adopt a rescue cat, or have time on your hands to help with volunteering, St Albans and District Catch Protection would like to hear from you. For more details, contact St Albans and District Cats Protection on 0845 371 2064 or visit the website www.stalbans.cats.org.uk.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
If you want to get in touch with the business on Radio Verulam, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.
You were saying during the break there, John, that you had some interesting information about an allotment.
Ah, yes. A kind of super allotment. It's called St Albans Food Smiles. Smiles spelt like it sounds, but it's also got the miles in there because what they're doing, I say we're part of this. Several dozen people have got together, and it's an allotment cooperative, so we're producing quite a lot of stuff. We've just started sowing now on, funnily enough, that farm that was mentioned in your clip, producing the spelt, which is in Harpenden.
It's fantastic. It sounds absolutely marvellous. Can you go and visit it as a sort of layman?
It's open to members, so anyone can join up, and you can find all about it in either website Transition St Albans or St Albans Food Smiles. Interesting, isn't it, that so many things like our restaurant are in Harpenden, although we do find ourselves part of St Albans.
Before we go into our last clip, John, would you just like to tell people how they can get in touch with that little place and then book a table or just pop in and see you?
Yes. That little place is the local independent British restaurant, very unusual. And it's right in the centre of Harpenden, in Station Road, very near the Harpenden Arms, in between that and the station itself. Number 5, and have a look on the website www.thatlittleplace.co.uk, and there's all sorts of things, including a video about local food sourcing and business advice on there as well.
Well, we have one final clip, and so Vicky and I weren't finished yet. We had another question to ask all our crowds, and this was really just a question of quality or price. And again, we were quite surprised at the outcome.
The quality.
I think now the quality. When I was younger and had a family, then you need bulk, and so the price really told me what I was going to buy. But now I just treat myself.
I think there's a blend. I think there's a trade-off. I think probably quality first, and then we look at price.
The quality, definitely quality. We'd rather buy something we can see that we like rather than just buying something that is in a supermarket at a set price. Quality is important to me, yes. Well, I like fresh vegetables, nice and firm. And I think if they're bought like at the farmers market, tomatoes and things like that, they'll be freshly picked, locally grown. As in the supermarket, they've been buzzed in, and quite often they've got very little flavour.
We do prefer probably quality over price. If you enjoy food, then we quite enjoy cooking, and you want to get nice ingredients, and that probably reflects itself in what we buy and where we buy it.
It certainly makes me feel as though you ought to be handing out little cards at this market to all these people who love quality produce, are prepared to pay, and are really looking for gorgeous flavour, because that sounds like just up your street, John.
Well, funnily enough, at these Harpenden Farmers Market in September, the 28th, it's going to be launching the St Albans and Harpenden, which is now called, Food and Drink Festival. And a number of us are going to have food stalls and cookery demonstrations, and exactly what you got in mind.
Fantastic, that sounds absolutely great. So, we've learnt a huge amount this evening, and it's been quite surprising. What do you think you've learnt, Trevor?
Oh, well, I've been quite impressed by the whole sort of quality angle, about how that's made such an impression on me. I mean, I thought it would have been price, or quality as a nice to have, but actually our discerning St Albans and surrounding areas public actually seem to believe that the quality will out, and they don't mind paying that little bit extra. Is that just a feature of the local affluent St Albans area, the 5th happiest place in Britain, also possibly the 5th most expensive place in Britain? I don't know. I mean, it's
I've got a bit of insider knowledge on this, because I was actually part of a project that worked on the Wheathampstead Farmers Market, and it was a lovely little market. Unfortunately, it really struggled because there's sort of two halves to Wheathampstead. And the half that sort of live on one side of the village just found it too expensive and weren't interested. And the half that were on the other side that absolutely adored it were a bit too busy always to go. So it didn't survive, which is a bit sad. But one of the things that the group were trying to do was to try and figure out whether the market ought to also be catering for the people with the tighter purse strings. Mm. And the reality, of course, in my mind, and from the research that I did, was that those people are always going to go to the Tesco's that's in the village. So actually you need to, the Tesco's is for those people, and the farmers market was for the other people. You can't do too many things at once. And I started off the programme with that, and I'm sort of finishing with that.
And Claire, you're bursting to get in now, so...
No, simply that... that a lot of people had the date of that market in their calendar, so a lot of them, when Vicky and I were speaking to them, they knew it was on that particular day of the month. They knew it was once a month. Quite a lot of them said, this is a good market. So it's not just the fact that they were prepared to go, but it was a go-to. They knew about it. It was very, very well publicised.
And just on that point, I can tell you that our Sunday roast in Harpenden, when there's a farmers market on, it's packed.
I can believe it. I can believe it.
So again, you're saying about the Wheat Hampstead market, Vicky, but again, when people just have a routine of going to the St Albans, and then it builds on itself, doesn't it? Because then more traders want to sell at it, more people want to come, and the whole thing just sort of builds up.
Well, I haven't had any dinner. And now I am.
So you're going to go into the garden, pick some
absolutely.
mint for Pimm's, and then hope that your wife's cooked something.
In a very small way, we've started to grow our own, but not to the extent necessary to sustain us, unfortunately. Well, that's been the business, our special on locally produced food. We've looked at all sorts of things like what's the business case and who the great suppliers on our doorstep. And one of them was John Gunner from That Little Place, a restaurant in Harpenden. Well, that just about wraps up the show, except to say thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show, and please listen again soon.
You've been listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. If there's anything in the show you want to talk to us about, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.